I wanted to ask, what's your take on how the Russian military campaign is going in Ukraine? And what do you see are the main issues they're having to deal with here?
It's not going very well. As one of the major indicators, they keep losing senior military officers. There have been 4 confirmed reports of general officers being killed. Actually, another one that's coming through on the Ukrainian Telegram channels from the Ministry of Defense of an even more senior officer. This time a 2-star, an army commander that was killed when the Ukrainians struck another command and control node. That's a poor indicator. The fact that the Russians' advances have stalled on every axis of attack on the north, east, and south, and they've actually reversed some of their territorial gains to consolidate their positions. That's an indicator that they don't have the combat power necessary to achieve their objectives, and also the apparent losses of significant amounts of equipment. So this is the main fighting vehicles, their tanks and infantry fighting vehicles, armored personnel carriers, but also the logistics required to support all these all of this combat power has been on multiple occasions we see reports, evidence of the destruction. Planes still being knocked out of the sky. These are not good indicators. It looks like they're shifting to a defensive posture for at least a short term.
Well, that's a very damning assessment. Do you think that the Russians could lose this, or to put it another way, that the Ukrainians could win this? I wanted to ask how surprised you've been as well that the Ukrainians have fought so hard to this moment in time.
This is probably going to be one of the major conclusions from historians, that the Ukrainians fought fiercely and they were underestimated as a fighting force. The morale mismatch, the asymmetry between the reluctant Russian armed forces that were lied to, were deceived about the offensive operations, and the Ukrainians fighting for their homes, fighting fiercely to prevent the Russians from seizing large cities. That is going to be something that most historians will probably take away as a major lesson of this war. That information operations, the Ukrainian military buying time on the ground has provided President Zelensky the ability to rally his people and rally the free world to impose cost on Russia. Those are two major dynamics in this war and how it's fought. But we shouldn't somehow kind of have wishful thinking about how this is going to unfold. This is still likely to be a protracted conflict. The Russians digging into defensive positions indicates that they have no intention of leaving, and the air power and long-range artillery striking and destroying Ukrainian cities is the way that this is likely to play out for the next weeks and maybe even months.
As a Ukrainian by birth, I wanted to ask you how painful it's been on a personal level to see the destruction of the country and the deaths of so many people.
Well, it's very sad for me to watch these beautiful cities that I visited destroyed. I have friends there that I speak to on a regular basis. I have no family to speak of, nobody that we've maintained contact with. It's an empathy for a place that I've known and cared for, and the people I've gotten to know. My deep concerns have actually been for the U.S. place in the world order, and how this, if Russia were to be successful, how this would affect U.S. national security. And it was a very, very anxious period of time for the first several days, for the first week. Now I feel for the population, and I also, in a certain ways, feel a deeper sense of connection to Ukraine than I have at probably at any other point in my life. I feel a pride in the people that are on the front lines defending freedom and, frankly, preserving the way of life for my country, for your country.
And from a US perspective, how do you think the current administration of Joe Biden has handled the crisis so far, and what should it be doing differently?
Sure. So I think the most important thing is to shake off wishful thinking and this kind of incremental approach, metering in assistance when just in time, reacting to the situation on the ground, which has been kind of the consistent method of operation for the Biden administration. They've reacted. You could see that in the fact that they were only willing to levy sanctions after Russia had invaded. That's something that we need to start to work past. We need to start making proactive decisions, understanding how this could unfold in a dangerous and threatening kind of way for the U.S. population, for our alliance, the Euro-Atlantic Alliance, and make some courageous decisions about the kind of support we need to provide. So that means less restrained support for Ukraine in the kind of weapons and capabilities they need to fight this war, and try to fight it to a conclusion more quickly.
And are there specific weapon systems you think should be being provided?
They need air power. They need the Soviet era air power that we've thought was too threatening thus far. It's not. They need drones, but different kinds of drones. Those drones that are coming in now, well-known switchblades. They're great, but they're still short-term. They're one-off use. They need unmanned combat aerial vehicles that would help them destroy these artillery, these rockets, the planes that are taking off from Russian airfields. They need that kind of air power, and they need depots of equipment flowing in constantly, because to defend against a Russian army that has the level of firepower, the provision with the kind of artillery it needs, the Ukrainians just need more.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting you mentioned the US blocking the transfer of those MiG-29 fighter jets from Poland to Ukraine. Was that a misstep by the US president? And do you think he was wrong, the concerns that could drag NATO into a third world war?
I think the bar for a third world war is very, very high. The Russians are not interested in entering into a world war with NATO when their armies are already so bogged down in Ukraine. The threshold is not the provision of planes. The threshold may even not be a no-fly zone. I think it's probably beyond that. This is not necessarily something I'm advocating for. I just don't think that the bar is that low for major hostilities between the U.S., between NATO and Russia, on the likelihood that could escalate, or on the likelihood that Russian forces get destroyed. So that's why I think it's a low bar to provide aircraft and help the Ukrainians establish their own no-fly zone. Same thing with air defense. Same thing with these unmanned combat aerial vehicles. Those are pretty low bars.
And can I ask you about how the war is being viewed in the United States? In particular, are you alarmed that some niche elements of the right-wing media appear to be playing down the invasion? I'm thinking of the likes of Fox News' Tucker Carlson, who's been accused of parroting Kremlin talking points, and some other outriders and former Trump supporters.
Of course, I'm deeply concerned about this. We have this is part of the reason that we found ourselves in a major war between Russia and Ukraine, because there was a cheerleading for Vladimir Putin, indicating that the costs emerging from the U.S. would not be high, that sanctions wouldn't be high. These in the hours and in the days before the war started, you had a large portion of the political elites signaling to Putin that the costs are not going to be high. Of course, that turned out to be wrong. The whole world coalesced in support of Ukraine. But even now, you have an effort by the far-right Republicans, folks like Tucker Carlson, trying to rebrand themselves either as supporters of Ukraine or trying to pivot and blame President Biden for this failure, when in fact, President Biden could have done more, but by far, it was the Republican Party and its signaling of fractured political elites, of a fractured kind of base in the U.S., a polarized base that indicated that the U.S. was weak and distracted, and this was the time to strike.
Great. Can I say one more that's just on a slightly different topic?
Okay.
In terms of your own extraordinary personal experience as a former senior advisor on Ukraine to the US government, how do you feel now about your treatment by the Trump administration?
I mean, I think I think that professionals, national security experts, non-politicals that are doing their job are there for a reason. I think it maybe now it's clear, a little bit clearer that when I voiced my concerns, it was on the merits, and that I was trying to avert the situation that we have unfolding now. And it's unfortunate that too many folks were forced out of government because they didn't do the political dirty work of the Trump administration and are not now serving to advance the U.S. interests.